The rain began just before sunset, soft at first, then heavy and wild, as if the sky had been holding back for too long. Alina Carter stood by her kitchen window and watched the street blur under sheets of silver water. The trees bent low and the wind howled between the houses. She liked storms. They felt honest. They did not hide their feelings the way people did. Her house was quiet, as it had been for 2 years. Since the divorce, silence had become her most loyal companion. She had learned to live with it, to move through it gently. She worked from home, read at night, watered her plants, and avoided long conversations. Her world had become small but safe. She poured hot water into a mug and dropped in a tea bag. Steam rose slowly. The lights flickered once. She barely noticed. Then came the knock. It was quick, hesitant, almost lost in the sound of thunder. Alina froze. Nice. No one visited her without calling first. She waited, thinking she might have imagined it. The rain beat harder against the door. Another knock followed. Okay, this one clearer. She walked slowly toward the door, her heartbeat calm but curious. When she opened it, cold wind rushed inside, and there he was. Noah Bennett stood on her porch, drenched. His dark hair clung to his forehead, rain sliding down his jaw. His shirt was soaked through, pressed against his chest. He looked older than she remembered, stronger. Not the teenage boy who once rode his bike in circles on the street. "I'm really sorry," he said, brushing water from his face. "My mom isn't home yet. Forgot my key, and the door won't open." His voice was deeper now, steady but slightly embarrassed. Alina blinked, surprised by how tall he had become. She had not paid attention before. He was 23, she reminded herself. An adult thunder cracked loudly behind him. "Come in," she said without thinking further. He stepped inside quickly. Water dripped onto the floor. The door shut behind him, cutting off the roar of the storm. For a second, they simply stood. There, up close, she noticed the sharp lines of his face. Shoulders were broad. His eyes were darker than she remembered. "Thank you," he said softly. She nodded and walked to the hallway closet. "You'll catch a cold. Wait here." She handed him a large towel. Their fingers brushed. The contact was light, almost accidental. Yet it lingered in her mind longer than it should have. Noah dried his hair, pushing it back. He looked younger when he smiled, almost shy. "I didn't think the rain would get this bad," said. "It never warns you," Alina replied. The lights flickered again. This time longer. She felt the air shift, heavy and thick, as if something invisible had entered the room with him. "You can sit," she said, pointing toward the living room. "I'll get you something warm." As she moved toward the kitchen, she felt his presence behind her, quiet but strong. She did not know why it made her aware of her own steps, of the way her sweater rested on her shoulders, of the softness in her voice. She poured him a cup of tea. When she returned, he was standing near the bookshelf, studying the old photo frames on the wall. One picture showed her wedding day. She had forgotten it was still there. That was a long time ago, she said before he could ask. He turned slightly. "You look happy in it." She smiled faintly. It was a different time. He nodded, not pushing further. She handed him the tea. Again, their fingers touched. This time neither pulled away quickly. "Thank you," he said, holding her gaze. Just a second longer than polite, she stepped back, sitting across from him. The storm outside grew louder. Rain slammed against the windows. The world beyond the glass seemed distant and unreachable. "You must have been stuck outside for a while," she said. "Yeah," he admitted. "I tried calling my mom, but she didn't answer. She works late on Thursdays." He smiled softly. "You remember? I noticed things." He laughed quietly. The sound warmed the room more than the tea. She realized something then. She had not heard laughter inside this house in months. The lights flickered once more, and then they went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room. For a second, neither of them moved, then thunder cracked so loudly that the windows trembled. "Power's gone," Noah said calmly. Yes, Alina replied, steadying her voice. She stood and searched the kitchen drawer for candles. Her hands moved quickly. She had prepared for storms before. She just had not prepared for this feeling, this strange awareness of another adult man standing in her house after dark. She lit 3 candles and placed them around the living room. Soft, golden light filled the space. Shadows danced along the walls when she turned back. Noah was watching her, not in a careless way, in a focused way. The candlelight changed his face. It softened him, yet made him look more serious, more defined. "You don't have to stay if you're uncomfortable," he said quietly. "I'm not uncomfortable." She answered too quickly. Silence settled between them. Outside, the rain continued, its heavy rhythm. Inside, something quieter began to grow. He removed his wet jacket and placed it over a chair. Shirt clung to him still. She noticed and immediately looked away. "You should change," she said. "You'll freeze." He hesitated. "I don't have anything dry." She paused. Then she walked toward the hallway again. In the back of her closet were old sweaters that once belonged to her ex-husband. She had never thrown them away. They meant nothing now. She handed one to Noah. "It might be big," she said. He gave her a small smile. "That's okay." He stepped into the bathroom to change. Alina stood alone in the candlelight, her heart beating slightly faster. She told herself this was normal. She was just helping someone, but when he returned wearing the sweater, something shifted. It fit him differently. The sleeves stopped perfectly at his wrists. The fabric rested comfortably across his shoulders. He did not look like a boy borrowing clothes. He looked like a man standing in her living room. "You were right," he said with a small laugh. "It fits." Her throat felt dry suddenly. "Yes," she said softly. They sat again, closer this time because of the small circle of candlelight. The storm seemed far away now. He leaned back slightly, studying the room. "You always keep everything neat." She smiled. "I like order. Does it make things easier?" She looked at him, surprised by the question. "It makes things quieter." She replied. He nodded slowly, as if understanding more than she expected. Another crash of thunder echoed without thinking. She flinched. He noticed. "It's okay," said gently. His voice carried a calm strength that unsettled her in a different way. She realized she had not seen him clearly before tonight. He had always been part of the background, her neighbor's son, polite, distant. Now he felt present, real, alive. In her space, the candle flame flickered between them. She wondered when he had stopped being a child in her eyes. Or perhaps he had always been growing and she had simply stopped looking. The rain softened slightly, but the tension in the room did not. Neither spoke for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "I'm glad you opened the door." She swallowed. It was just the rain. He held her gaze. "Maybe," he said. And for the first time that evening, Elena felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Not fear, not sadness, but possibility. And as the storm raged on outside, neither of them realized that this simple knock at the door would not end when the rain stopped. The darkness lingered in the house after the power outage, but the soft candlelight gave the room a warm, almost magical glow. Alina Carter watched the flickering flames, listening to the rain pounding on the roof, each drop sounding louder than the last. It was quiet in a way that made her heart feel heavier, fuller, and strangely alive. She sat on the edge of the couch, and across from her, Noah Bennett adjusted the sweater she had lent him. The fabric hung perfectly on his shoulders, and he looked at her with eyes that held more than just gratitude. There was curiosity, depth, a quiet question that neither of them had yet dared to ask out loud. For a moment, they just sat there. The storm outside filled the spaces between words, yet inside, there was a tension that made the air almost too thick to breathe. Alina sipped her tea carefully, trying to calm herself. She reminded herself he was her neighbor's son, a young man she had known since he was a teenager. And yet the man sitting before her was someone entirely new, someone she couldn't ignore. There was a strange mix of familiarity and distance, a magnetic pull that made her stomach tighten. Noah shifted slightly, picking up on her unease. "You always keep things so organized," he said, breaking the silence. His voice was gentle, calm, almost intimate. He leaned back in the chair, casually but deliberately, showing a relaxed posture that contrasted with the nervous flutter. She felt inside. Alina smiled faintly. "I like order. It helps me think." Her words sounded simple, but she noticed the way his gaze lingered on her. He wasn't just listening. He was seeing her in a way no one had in years. The candlelight danced across his face, highlighting features she hadn't noticed before. The curve of his jaw, the sharpness of his cheekbones, the warmth in his dark eyes. She had never considered him as anything beyond a neighbor, a polite boy she had watched grow up. But now, in the quiet and the glow of flickering flames, she realized she had been seeing him in a new light, one that made her heart race and her breath catch. She shook her head subtly, trying to focus on something ordinary. "I feel lost sometimes," Noah said suddenly, his voice low. Alina turned to him, startled by the sudden intimacy of his words. He looked down at his cup, tracing the rim with his finger. "Not just now, but lately. I feel like I'm just drifting, like I don't belong anywhere." Confession hung between them. She felt a pang in her chest, recognizing the honesty in his vulnerability. It reminded her of her own loneliness, her own nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone could ever see her truly. Alina leaned back, letting out a soft sigh. "I know that feeling," she said quietly. "After my divorce, I built walls. I stopped letting anyone in. It's safer that way. But it's lonely, so lonely sometimes." She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the edge of her sweater. She could feel his gaze on her again, gentle, patient, understanding. He wasn't judging her. He was listening, really listening. The conversation grew more intimate as the storm raged outside. They shared pieces of themselves that they had kept hidden from others. Noah talked about his struggles at work, the pressure to succeed, the weight of expectations he hadn't chosen for himself. Lena spoke about her own disappointments, the moments of heartbreak she had carried silently. Each word, each pause drew them closer, creating a fragile connection that neither had expected when the night began. Thunder rolled across the sky, startling her slightly. Noah reached out instinctively, placing a reassuring hand near hers on the coffee table. The touch was light, respectful, but it sent a jolt through her. She looked up at him, and for a moment their eyes locked. There was something unspoken there, something charged and dangerous and thrilling all at once. She knew she shouldn't feel it. He was younger. He was her neighbor's son. And yet she could not deny the way her chest tightened, the way her pulse quickened. He leaned back in his chair, studying her face. "You're not invisible," he said softly. His words caught her off guard, slicing through the careful walls she had built around herself. She felt warmth spread through her chest, a combination of surprise and something deeper. For years she had feared she was unnoticed, that her presence was insignificant. But here, in this dimly lit room, with rain pouring around them and the man she had watched grow from boyhood into manhood sitting before her, she felt seen. Truly seen. Alina looked down at her teacup, unsure how to respond. She felt a tremor, of something she hadn't felt in a long time, of fragile hope, stirring of desire, a curiosity that whispered promises she wasn't sure she was ready to explore. "I thank you," she said softly. Her voice sounded small, but her eyes met his briefly, acknowledging the unspoken understanding between them. Noah smiled faintly, a subtle curl of his lips that sent a warmth through her. "You don't have to thank me," he said. Meant it. "You deserve to be seen." His words, simple as they were, carried weight. They resonated in the space between them, pressing gently but insistently on something in her chest she had tried to ignore. The rain outside softened slightly, turning into a steady drizzle, but inside the tension remained. Every glance, every slight movement felt electric. Alina tried to focus on ordinary things: the tea, the candles, the hum of the refrigerator, but nothing seemed ordinary anymore. Noah's presence filled the room. Its energy was tangible, and it made her hyper-aware of herself in ways that were both unsettling and exhilarating. She stood suddenly, needing to move, needing space. "I should check on the windows," she said lightly, even though she knew the rain wasn't a threat. She walked across the room, and he didn't follow, immediately giving her the air she seemed to need. But she felt his eyes on her back, a steady presence that made her skin tingle. Returning to the couch, she noticed the way the candlelight flickered across the room. Shadows moved in rhythm with the flames, wrapping them in a cocoon of warmth and quiet. Noah had moved closer without her noticing, subtly shrinking the distance between them. He wasn't pressing, wasn't forcing attention, he was simply there. Close enough that the air between them felt charged. "You've changed a lot since I last saw you," he said quietly, not looking directly at her. "You seem stronger, softer, more yourself." His voice carried a tenderness that made her heart skip. Alina felt a flush rise in her cheeks. "Maybe," she murmured, unsure if she wanted to explore what he meant. The storm outside was fading, the rain tapping gently against the roof now. But inside, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken words and emotions that neither could name. The candlelight caught in Noah's eyes, making them shine with a mixture of warmth, curiosity, and something darker, deeper, more intimate. Alina couldn't look away. She tried to remind herself of the boundaries, of the impossibility of the feelings stirring within her, but it was too late. The pull between them was undeniable. "You feel different tonight?" she whispered. Not entirely. Aware she was confessing the truth. He glanced at her, his expression softening, and then a faint smile played on his lips. "Maybe," he said, his voice low and rich. The simplicity of the word carried weight, and it lingered in the air, heavy and fragrant with possibility. Elena's pulse quickened. She realized with a jolt that she had been waiting for this in some subconscious corner of her heart for years. Waiting for someone to see her, to acknowledge her presence, to stir something she thought had been lost. No, was doing that? And it frightened her as much as it excited her. He leaned slightly forward, his hand brushing against the edge of the coffee table, close to hers. She felt the warmth of his skin through the small distance, a subtle but electric touch. She looked up at him, and their eyes met. There was no shame, no awkwardness, only understanding. A recognition of something that had been there all along but had waited for the right moment to surface. "I've missed this," he said quietly, almost to himself, talking like this, feeling. Seen, his admission made her heart ache. But in the ache was a strange comfort. She nodded, swallowing hard. "Me too," she whispered. The words felt like a confession, but neither of them recoiled. Instead, they leaned into the shared vulnerability, embracing the quiet intimacy that had grown between them in the span of a single evening. Thunder rolled once more, distant but insistent. It reminded them of the storm outside, a reflection of the storm inside. Yet, despite the noise and the chaos beyond the walls of the house, Kay remained cocooned together, two hearts beating in quiet synchronicity. Alina realized that the night had changed everything. What began as a simple act of letting someone in from the rain had grown into something far more profound. It was a connection that neither could ignore. A silent understanding that had taken years to awaken. Noah's gaze held hers, steady, unwavering, and in that look she saw a reflection of her own longing. A longing for touch, for understanding, for recognition, a longing that had been buried under years of caution and routine. It was dangerous, yes, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, she felt alive. They continued to talk, sharing stories and confessions in the glow of the candles. Every word, every pause, every glance seemed to pull them closer, weaving an invisible thread between them. The storm outside gradually softened, leaving a quiet drizzle, but inside the tension remained, electric and alive. Eventually, Alina glanced at the clock and realized hours had passed. She felt exhausted, yet exhilarated.